This is Eagle 7 Sports Radio, 90 minutes with mathematical. And we are discussing climate change. And my guests, incredible guests, well-informed guests, Atai Albert and Tony Ojeshina.
Because of man's quest for industrialization globally, man's quest for development globally, things were done that now affected or created an imbalance in what God has created. He made the sun, moon, and stars. When you start talking about the sun is intense ultraviolet, and between the earth and the sun is something called ozone layer. Ozone layer was put there by God to protect the earth from intense ultraviolet. So there is a slow dissipation of heat from the ultraviolet into the earth. But due to man's quest for industrialization, we started creating problems that have now put a hole in the ozone layer. For instance, when we start talking about carbon, we have ozone fission substances or greenhouse gases that man through industrialization has your carbon dioxide, your carbon monoxide, your methane, all of those are carbon derivatives, and NOx. And what is happening is that we call them ozone depletion substances because they are the ones that, when emitted due to massive global industrialization, go and pierce through the ozone layer and created a hole that cannot be remedied now. What we're trying to do globally is to make sure it doesn't expand. And when that hole is created between the sun, which is the ultraviolet, and the earth, the heat dissipation that God had designed to be coming in through, that made perfect climate for us, changed drastically. Because there's now more heat being dissipated from the ultraviolet level into the earth. So there's what we call temperature rise of the earth. And as that temperature rises, for instance, the water bodies, which is part of what God made initially, this expand. In the Arctic and the North Pole area, where ice is what is there predominantly, it melts. And so you now see what is called sea level rise, because water will always find its way. So as those things come down, the heat comes down, and you have expansion of the water, then when rain falls, you end up what is called flooding. Those are the manifestation of it. So now there's an imbalance in the climate because of the rate at which, due to the hole in the ozone layer, the ultraviolet is coming in, then there is an imbalance in the ecosystem. That is what we talk about, the climate change. The climate now changes. You find out when it's supposed to be raining, it may rain longer, it may not rain the way it's supposed to. You find out during the warm season, the heat is so much that it even results in heat waves. And so you have people being affected, and there are so many different consequences to what does. That is basically the fundamental of climate change.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, what an introduction. I'm just wondering, you see, I haven't listened to what Tony has to say about climate change. Nobody would dispute the evidence, the manifestation of climate change around the world. It is here. You know, the places are turning into deserts, and the sea is rising, and so on and so forth. Yet in your country where you are, the new president of the United States of America, whose voice is that of possibly the most powerful man on earth, says that climate change is a scam, that it is fake news. Why would the most powerful man in the world, with all the evidences that we see around us, an issue that the United Nations has taken up more seriously than any other issue probably in history, why would he say that it is a scam and it's fake news?
Well, I want that by saying that leadership has never been chosen based on the smartest or the know-it-all person. So leadership might actually be bestowed on people not necessarily because they're the smartest. But that having been said, there is no basis for the leader of a developed world to lead the discussion against climate situation because climate impact is real. And the last contributor did
Tony is his
say,
name.
okay, Tony, like Tony did say, apparently the human greed has led us to where we are because apart from the fact that humanity has decided to be very greedy by trying to all underneath minerals, whereby now exposing the carbon content and the methane content into the air, which depletes the ozone layer, we wouldn't be discussing this. And it is still because of that same human greed, the capitalist mindset. He says, drill, baby, drill. That is still making the president of America think like that. I don't think he doesn't believe that there's climate impact because the hurricanes are coming even very late in the year like they never used to be. The heat wave is born in California like never used to be before. America has experienced the last 3 years has been the hottest 3 years of our existence. So it is foolhardy for anybody to assume or drive the whole narrative that climate change is a fluke. But that equally having been said, empires rise and empires fall. If America as a country holds strong to that opinion by their president and decides to back out of all effort towards climate change remediation, then I can tell you that that will likely be the beginning of the fall of the American empire because the climate change is coming with so much investment, so much opportunities, and so much things will replace. And if America does not position itself to compete in the next 5 years to 25 years of net zero 2050, then America will have more to lose than gain for the wisdom of the incoming president.
Wow, that's very, very serious. That's a serious matter. And, I keep saying that this is probably the most important subject being discussed around the world yet. And I just heard what you said about how America, because he represents America, feels about it. But let me come to Tony now. Seriousness. How serious should we take this issue? It appears that it is so distant. Climate change is a subject that is distant from, as I said earlier, our dining tables in Nigeria. They even describe it as an existential threat, that the end of the world could actually be in sight for something so serious, described as I have just done. Why is our attitude to it in Nigeria the way it is?
Well, first of all, we, as a government, what we need and that we're not doing well is advocacy and heightened awareness. However, I must give it to Nigeria. Nigeria has been involved in a lot of the protocols and conventions, and Nigeria has signed on to these conventions, Kyoto Protocol, Montreal Protocol, and even the Paris Conference. So Nigeria is always being part of those who theoretically want to do something about it. But the major problem to me is going back to America. He said, he used the operative word is drill, baby, drill. If I may just chip in there, up until Obama came to office, America was not heavily, massively drilling oil. And the Republican...
Say that again.
Up until Obama came to office,
Okay.
America was dependent mostly on other countries for its oil, for its energy, and they were not drilling. They wanted to continue to conserve it, not because of climate change, but because this is a non-renewable resource. When it starts to deplete, America can come out. But when Obama came to office, and there was that economic problem, America just turned on the pipe and started to drill. They now saw the economic implication of this. Although the Democratic parties have always been on the side of trying to balance climate change, okay, but the Republican Party has always been against it. And it's all because of capitalism. In fact, what Trump has in this Project 2025 will be quite disastrous. Like he said, it could be the beginning of the fall of that empire. Because you can't continue to drill, releasing fossil fuel, okay, and not believing the urban. If you turn on CNN any day, you will see flooding everywhere in America. You will see bush burning everywhere in America. You will see all the manifestation of climate change everywhere in America. And people are dying. The World Health Organization has indicated by between 2030 to 2050, there will be 250,000 more deaths due to climate change. And so, to me, and Nigeria has taken this serious, it's just that the contribution that we have made is not that quantifiable into the ozone layer depletion. Although we are doing some things, we have gas flaring in the oil industry, we have agriculture. When you do agricultural farming like poultry farming and stuff like that, they emit CO2. Okay, and agriculture is getting bigger and bigger. So that will be our own form of contribution now. So I believe that it's going to take a madman not to want to take it serious, because every day you see the manifestation of the problem. In fact, America is worse hit than most. See what Florida? If you see what happened in Louisiana, all these things are happening everywhere, from flooding, which are part of the manifestation of climate change, severe flooding. So it's important that all of us globally sign on to it. But the so-called world leader, the most, I say, industrial country in the world, is the one fighting it for capital gain. That's why I agree with him that it may just well be the beginning of the fall of that empire.
Nigeria is drilling also.
Yes.
And that indicates that we are a major contributor. If fossil fuels, of course, are a source of these carbon footprints that we are talking about. And so how much? You say it's not quantified yet, Nigeria's contribution to it, but we are also as guilty.
Yes.
So my worry now is that how close to this irredeemable redemption of the world are we? How close to it are we? Because this will determine for us what we do going forward. Yeah. Some people think that we've reached a point of no return, that even whatever we do now, that situation cannot be reversed anymore. So how close to that are we in your studies and in your understanding?
Well, in Nigeria, like I said earlier, I've always been involved in the conventions and the protocols. And whatever is decided, once you are a signatory, you have to comply with it. For instance, the issue of chlorofluorocarbon, CFCs, which Nigeria was getting a lot of refrigerators, that have CFC as their freon, okay? And that is a major contributor. That's an ODS. Nigeria had to reverse that and had stopped bringing in, allowing people to bring in that CFC. They are now using the state-of-the-art technology that is climate friendly. In that area, Nigeria has done well. Now, in the oil drilling, you understand that Nigeria was a partner. It is a partner. They have joint venture partnership to a lot of companies from developed countries. And the role is for both of them to manage it. And one of the things that I did when I first came back to Nigeria from the US after 20 years is to encourage FEPA. I was consulting for them. And to say, now, the oil companies did not want to start using gas, which is more friendly in terms of gas for energy. All right? And they were flaring it. And so there was a penalty because they didn't want to go to the capital investment that they needed to start putting plants there for gas production. Okay. So federal government was not given a penalty, and now encourage federal government to say, look, the penalty is too small. If you're giving them seats to pay so much for every gas that they flare, cubic feet of gas that they flare, it's too little. That is why they are not going into gas production. So federal government increased the penalty. And that drove the oil companies, which is one of the steps that have been taken in Nigeria, into now going into gas production. That's where you have the LNGs, the NGL extraction plants, the extravels, and so on and so forth. They had to go into all that. And you see, we are now running a lot of our energy through gas. You know, of the West African gas pipeline that even runs through Wasimi here. Okay. Those steps Nigeria is taking because Nigeria has signed on to a lot of these conventional protocols. So I think Nigeria is doing well, but the problem comes from the large nations heavily into our level of industrialization is so small. Heavily industrialized countries. That's where the problem comes from. And if one of them continues to say, no, drill, baby, drill, the whole world is affected because the ozone hole cannot be closed. What we're trying to do is we don't want to expand it. So when you limit the ODSs, GHGs that's going on, then you keep that hole there. And hopefully you create a balance that is necessary for human, because there are too many implications. There's health problems, all kinds of things. In fact, talking about sports, if I can come in here, it affects even the sportsmen directly. Respiratory problems, which are health implications coming from global warming.
Look, as you were speaking, I was just remembering that every Nigerian has a generator. Almost every home has a generator, and we are burning fossil fuels to drive these generators. Thank God it is not measured the amount of carbon footprints we add to the global levels.
Yes.
Abi, am I speaking correctly? Atai, even the generator, I don't think any country uses, as many generators as we do in this country, and it's mostly all petrol and diesel and stuff like that. Talk about that.
Yes. Chief, everybody's contribution to greenhouse gas today is measured, is calculated, even to an individual contribution to the contaminants is now being measured. And from next year, countries that are flaring more than what they're supposed to flare will start paying 45% of the cost of what they flare. And another 1 year, 2026, it will be 70% of what they are paying. And by 2027, if I'm not wrong, countries will have to pay 100% of the value of the gas they flare.
Yeah.
So coming back to Nigeria and our contribution, Nigeria actually is one of the least contributor to greenhouse gases when you put it at global perspective, because I think we are barely 0.05 per emission per capita. America is about 14%. We're about 0.05% emission per capita. and that's because of our population. But America is about 14%, China is about 17% greenhouse contribution. But because of the fact that the climate issue has become an existential problem, in COP8, that was committee of parties that was held in Dubai. The COP now, because of the peculiar situation that we're at 2.9 degrees Celsius climate temperature, which the target was 1.5 degrees Celsius pre-industrial climate temperature. So that becomes a very, very serious situation. So they now projected that it is not only the national sovereignty or sovereign government that should be responsible to addressing climate issue in a country. It should now be applied to businesses, should be applied to subnational, that like the states and the local government areas. To now, in fact, there is what they call a greenhouse gas protocol for countries, greenhouse protocol for states, greenhouse gas protocol for businesses, greenhouse gas protocol for products, and greenhouse protocol for even domestic families, because even how we cook and the way we cook using firewood, first of all, you have to cut firewood, which is there to help protect the ozone layer. And now when you burn firewood, it emits methane and carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, which is why part of our energy transition plan is to transit from those typical source of fuel, whether for domestic cooking or for heating our homes or for keeping our lights on, to less low carbon fuel and low or renewable energy. So everything is calculated that the global greenhouse distribution is clearly highlighted. Energy industry contributes 73% of greenhouse gases. Then energy, oil exploration alone contributes 33% of that. Aviation contributes about 16% from aviation, transport. That's aviation, sea, and other means of transportation contribute about 16%. Agriculture contributes about 18% to greenhouse gases. So all this has been identified, and clear-cut protocol on how they could reduce how much they put into this atmosphere is clearly defined. So going back to the previous question you asked, Tony, about what Nigeria is doing, I think we need to look at climate change as part of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals were all defined to help economies transform by trying to address each of those goals. Because if you look at those goals, they're supposed to help any country that implements it fully. And today I could say affirmatively, the hope of Nigerian transformation is really tied to full implementation of the UN SDG goals, of which climate change is one of them.
We didn't do anything about the Millennium Development Goal objectives, which ended in 2015 or so, if I'm not wrong. And that was right. That was the eradication of illiteracy, poverty, disease, and so on and so forth. Nigeria's participation was very, very minimal. And now looking at the needs, the things that we need to do, Tony, the things that Nigeria needs to do, any hope? Because I've been listening to both of you, and I just see, what I see is the impossibility of change in this our environment, particularly where people do not even have the information to start with.
Well, the biggest problem we have in Nigeria is data. accumulator of data, setting up data banks on most areas. Now you will find out that even a major cause that we haven't even spoken about is deforestation, that is cutting down of trees. And that happens in Nigeria haphazardly without monitoring. And that is a major source because the trees and leaves absorb carbon dioxide. And they give us oxygen. But
all the trees in Wasimi area have been cut down.
Exactly. And once you cut them down, then carbon dioxide goes off. And the oxygen they are supposed to take, they can't take it anymore. So it's a double whammy. So that area has to be, the monitoring and enforcement capability of Nigeria has to go up. Once they sign on to any convention, of course, they have to abide. What Atai has said is absolutely true. And the local problem that we have in Nigeria is the issue of having your data, making sure you do the right things at the right time, the political will from the government to be able to follow this process. Even our population, okay, we can't really quantify it well. We give figures, 270 million, 200 million. No, you can't get anything precise. But I believe that once the whole globe comes together, if they can get even America into the fold, it will be a lot easier, okay, for us in Nigeria to comply. Because it is very important that we comply. Because we are going to be, Nigerians are going to be the major recipients of the devastation that will come. We have, if you look, tsunami-prone areas in this country, about 10 of them. Riverine areas, Ogun is part, Lagos is part. So if we are not doing what we're supposed to do, when this flooding starts to come, then we end up with the Louisianas of the world. And here we have poor drainages. So, for those countries that have good drainages, you can see the devastation that took place. So there are internal things that need to be done in Nigeria. How do you measure it when you have secondary, tertiary, and primary drainages that are supposed to be done by government, that is not done, not maintained by government? If you go on this freeway alone, that got here, if you go on that freeway alone, you don't see any major drainages. Okay, where we are sitting is like uphill. When rain falls, it takes all kinds of silt down to the main road. So there are things that still need to be done nationally in Nigeria for us to be able to comply. That's my take.
Atai,
Yes.
well, let me announce to the world that this is Eagle 7 Sports Radio, and our conversation is on climate change. And my guests are Tony Ojeshina and Atai Albert. And in this fight or cause, every country must play a role because we are all connected. And if the biggest polluters, who are also the most powerful in the world, do not play their own part, we are supposed to play our own little part. As an advocate, you have been working with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Project. As an advocate, so what are we supposed to do in playing our own part in Nigeria now? Let's look at Nigeria. And that, of course, will rub off on a few other countries in our region. What are we to do now, at least to send out the message to start transformation, you as a transformation coach and expert?
Right. Chief, Tony did mention one major failure. Climate change was designed to be implemented based on three primary frameworks of advocacy, mitigation,
Correct.
and adaptation.
Yes.
Advocacy was supposed to be the part that created the global awareness strong enough to drive people to action. But because for some strange reason, UN don't have a network, there's no dedicated place you could find continuous information on climate activities. So that was not very successfully done. Why the awareness? Two, for Nigeria as a country, our first point of call is to first of all address it for what it is. Because when Nigerians went to COP28 with almost how many people that became an international issue of discussion, there were too many people that went there. And apparently, we are not very detailed people anymore. We are just not by God's doing, not because we can acquire knowledge. We no longer know how to read. We no longer follow stories for a long time. It's about so Nigeria came back with the impression that climate change was about stopping Nigeria from producing oil, our only source of survival, which is not the actual situation.
Yes.
So people in leadership, first of all, they just like Trump said, climate change is a fluke. It was another way that our leadership said, oh, they want to stop the continent of Africa, Nigeria, from exploring its God-given resources to survive. So first of all, that brought in a quagmire in the cause of people appreciating the situation and seeing what can be done. Two, globally today, established that Nigeria is one of the best countries that could drive the effort of climate change, especially when it comes to adverse. Reasons being, we have the largest youth population today. Average youth is about 18 years median age in Nigeria. We have one of the most celebrated tools, music. We have some of the best sportsmen, sports for climate change, fashion for climate change. All these premises has been approved as a way of using them to advocate, create more awareness on climate change. And Nigeria has with 39 billion barrels of crude, sitting on 209 trillion feet of gas, with this massive youth population, massive Afrobeat following. Today, we have artists with 100 million, 150 million followers. If Nigeria today decides to jump on as a major partner with United Nations to drive advocacy, we will be known all over the world as one of the major partners towards implementation of that goal. These are all stuff we can do. But to say that we can just sit back and keep exploring fossil fuel irresponsibly and non-responsively, we will pay for it, because now we're going to be charged. There is drones all over using satellite images, tracking to the last drop of carbon dioxide or methane you throw into the air. So every country now accounts, every state can even account, every sector account for their contribution, and they'll have to pay those fines from next year. So it is not if we should. If Nigeria wants to really, really step up, transform its oil operations, make more money, because the climate change mitigation is all about adding value. What you used to flare as flared gas, contaminating the air, you can convert it to EGT, to gas to liquid. You can convert it to methanol. You can convert it to low carbon fuel, diesel. So this is actually opportunity to invest in emerging solutions that if you don't do it now, you end up being a permanent buyer from those that are investing and developing those products outside. You will end up still having to depend on them, where you should be the one now to take advantage of climate implementation and create some of these solutions, this product that the world will come and buy from you. As at today, over 25% of ocean-going vessels that have been ordered by the massive shipping lines, Maersk Line and all these lines, are all methanol-driven vessels. They are not ordering diesel-driven vessels because with the amount of contamination contributed, imagine by how many vessels are flying the sea, how many airlines are flying all over the place. So the real culprit are these vessels that go through remote places where human activity directly is not there, but they keep sending all these fumes, exhaust fumes into the air. That's why all those cold places are now losing the ice, all of them melting back into the sea, rising the sea level, eroding the sea, the surrounding about sea walls. So there's a lot of money for countries who are actually implementing these goals. So you can go back and implement more. Ironically, we are very good at putting square pegs in round holes. You have people who know very little about how to implement these goals, implement this climate change to the benefit of the different sectors, but they don't know and they don't engage the right people to guide them. So these are all stuff we need to do to be in the direction, or we'll have to end up paying the fine, because by the end of 2025, COP30 is happening, and every country must appear at the COP with what they call nationally determined contribution towards climate change. 43% reduction in methane and about 40% reduction in carbon dioxide. So you must go there and report that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 things we are doing in different sectors to reduce how much greenhouse gas we're putting into the atmosphere. It is either you do that voluntarily or the UNFCCC will now impose a nationally determined contribution of their choosing on you to meet up. So we cannot hide. We cannot run away from it. And this applies to everyone that signed the treaty. So we don't have a choice than to now sit back, evaluate all our relationships, our production process, even the contract that the UPRC signs with operators. They must have a sustainability clause or you won't get funding.
Yeah. Wow.
So it is massive and it's really existential, like I said.
And it is also exciting because reading through everything that you have said, I'm excited, particularly the aspects of the Nigerian youths, the opportunities that abound, our deployment of soft power tools, music, fashion, sports, and so on and so forth, and the huge benefits that will come to this demography in Nigeria. That excites me a lot. But before we go on, well, information is power. As far as I'm concerned, with information, you can change the world. So our people need information. What do we do? How do we involve our people in this advocacy, which is the first step, the advocacy to get the information out, to get people to come and be part of this movement, to make our contributions towards the mitigation for climate change. So let me start with Tony. Experts like you are not too many in our environment. What can we do? Who can we work with? What are the next steps to take?
Well, before I even go into that, I want to just borrow from something that Atai said earlier. In terms of this insistence on fossil fuel, Nigeria is saying, they don't want us to drill our oil. I can see a parallel between the U.S. and Nigeria, because America is saying drill, baby, drill. Nigeria is saying they don't want us to drill our oil. Now, fossil fuel is responsible for 75% of greenhouse gases, and that's 90% of carbon dioxide emission. So what is needed? I can even see both Nigeria and US being liable with fines if Nigeria doesn't sit up and have what I call political will. For here, if there's no political will, no matter how hard you try in the private sector, in the public sector, okay, you are going to be hitting brick walls all the time. But I believe that people like us can contribute work with the private sector, work with the public sector, if the political will is there. Now, even if the political will is not there, the private sector cannot be able to even sustain what is it that they're trying to do. Because we know the way things are in Nigeria. So it falls back to government's political will. The issue of advocacy, the belief, the advantage that you are going to get if you comply. You have to look beyond what you think is going to cost you, not going to cost you. There's a major advantage that you're getting financially, if that's what you're looking at, if you comply. And I think that is an area that I want to plead to Nigerian government as I'm sitting here, and I hope some of them are listening, is let's garner the political will. Don't look at it from the perspective of they don't want us to drill our oil. Because if you comply, there are major advantages to it. But the disadvantage is that if you don't comply, you have to pay huge fines, which will come back to haunt you. And we are not that heavily industrialized that we are rather than for us to go into other industries, we are mostly dependent on oil and gas. So we need to diversify ourselves first, but at the same time, there has to be that political will to comply with the UN requirements.
You are an expert in this field. Atai Albert is an expert, obviously, in this field. And both of you are Nigerians. How can we, Nigeria, make use of you, both of you, in this humongous project that is ahead of us? The result of which, if you don't do it, there is liability. Atai, what are you people? You are a Nigerian. What are you doing? Sir. What are you doing with Nigeria? I'm daring you. You are in Atlanta there. What are you doing with Nigeria? What can we do? Yeah. Nigeria? What can I do? Even me, myself, what can I do?
Right. Chief, already, we are working on possibilities because in Nigeria is the only country that the best hands don't have a shot at helping the country. So you can say that for the length of the day, they'll still pick somebody else and give him the opportunity. I want to emphasize on what Tony just said. Investing in climate change action is more of an investment than just an expenditure.
Absolutely.
Because the next short-term 2030, long-term 2050 net zero, but it's 2060 by Nigerian argued that they need the 2060 to be able to be net zero. But globally, it's 2050. Chief, today, let me take your mind back to the semi-pro. Our big asset today are goods. And I feel
say that again so that we can hear. Say that again.
What could be used to create advocacy? Afrobeat economy as a whole, Afrobeat, fashion, comedy, film making, and all that are used love sport can be a major way of transforming a society. Let me break it down. If Davido or Wizkid, who just played this song, goes to perform in Afro Nation, Portugal, Canada, America, only the money that is paid to that artist comes back, if it ever comes back to Nigeria. So let me say, Afro Nation pulls in $15 million from one show, which they do. And they pay one of our best artists $500,000. And his Afrobeat show, probably they take 5 of them, pay some 200, 200, the big one 500. So they only, out of that $50 million, they probably come back home, 5 of them will come back with $1 million out of the $50 million. But if Nigeria, now it's okay, we want to use our economy, our music, comedy to drive advocacy anywhere in the world, you can actually take it as long as you fly under that canopy of UN. Development goals, nobody on earth can stop. because of the existential threat that climate change has caused, there is what called Global Covenant of Mayors that was set by Bloomberg. This was created, and they have about 13,000 cities under this. If the only way we can now repatriate our creative economy wealth, music, Nollywood, comedy, is to use it to advocate for climate change. By this, what I'm saying now, Nigeria will be the one that will host these shows in any of these cities that is part of the Global Covenant of Mayors, GCOM, Global Covenant of Mayors. Over 13,000 cities have signed up to do energy and climate action. On any of these cities can host any climate change events, show, Afrobeat. And you know now there are platforms where people can, on as they're jumping and enjoying the show, is creating power that is stored in cells that American government has invested to build. So now, if we now put up these shows anywhere in the world, if we make $30 million, we pay the artists, we take that $30 million back to Nigeria.
Wow.
That is GDP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's number 4. You know what I'm saying? For trade. So that is where we around 95% of Afrobeat revenue globally doesn't get back to Nigeria. So it's just for us to understand the implication of what we do. And by doing this, you are creating jobs, which is goal number what? You are reducing poverty, goal number 1. You are now, if you have a technology innovation like we have to back up the next major climate tool that will be launched all over the world, then you are equally implementing goal number 8, innovation, industry, and enterprise. So you must identify that everything you are doing is addressing one of the goals, one of the targets of the 17 UN SDG goals. So these are where we are about to lose out because our people already went home to say, because they don't want to learn. Our leadership don't want to understand, don't want to engage the right people to educate actual implementation and implications of actions and inactions surrounding climate change. So for the fear of learning becomes the fear of failing. So we don't even want to try. Throw one speculation into the works and let the world deal with it later. But we're going to lose. We're apparently going to play catch up because Afrobeat is the biggest thing that could sell out 80,000 stadium by a guy who just started 2 years ago. The whole world is waiting. No other person has this kind of tools. Only Nigeria has this kind of enablement to be able to partner with the UN and get more money to develop more Afrobeat artists. So another very interesting thing, Baba, I want to add here. If we start these Afrobeat shows, we take the brand, the boys, the whiskey that $1 million. We take the younger artists, 5 of them, and make new stars. So every 6 months, you can make new set of Afrobeat stars by tripping them all over the world, collaborating with the Latin American soca, the Akpan and Carnival, all in the name of climate change advocacy. You get paid, you repatriate all the money you make, you develop your industry. So all this UNSDG was designed to develop countries struggling to find their bearing, give you direction on if you do this, do that, do that. Different areas in your economy will automatically pick up. So that is how we need to look at it, where we need to,
Atai, you are just reminding us of who we really are. Some of us have always believed that Nigeria is going to be a cultural revolution center, that in the new world order of things, we've always had the potential to be the greatest black nation on earth. This is untapped resource. And I just, as you are speaking, I am sensing it. And I'm seeing Tony nodding his head here and now in agreement And I'm asking him now what's going through his mind about the possibilities, the opportunities, and what we should actually start to do and dream.
The solution that Atai has preferred is quite exciting. I wonder if Atai can convert it into a written form of proposal with UN backing, with his influence there, and then to be able to get it to Nigeria. Maybe through private sectors.
Yes, Tony, right. We are working on a total blueprint for Nigeria to lead the continent and even lead the world. The world is waiting for us. It's only Nigerians that don't have the confidence, the trust in themselves. The world knows that one country that could change anything in this world is Nigeria. And they are very happy that we don't know. They are very happy that we doubt ourselves. Because there's nothing a Nigerian can do, good or bad, in this world that anybody will be surprised. And they
I like that.
So, yeah, no, they can never be. In fact, they don't. Chief, do you know that we are the most unmarketable, unmarketed country ever on the face of the earth?
That's right.
Even Burkina Faso, even all these small countries, pride in themselves more than we do pride in ourselves, because our process of choosing leadership has come to haunt us at all levels. Where you see a man with opportunity to make a chapter chairman, will take his gate man to make him a chapter chairman. That same man, after 8 years, is a federal house.
Yeah.
And he doesn't believe that he was a gate man 8 years ago. He has not gone to one school to add one value to himself. So our problem is within us. But we have decided that we will not let that dim the light that Nigeria has to show the world, because for the black race to be represented, to stand tall and strong anywhere, Nigeria is that country that must stand strong. And we have everything to drive a major partnership with the UN in implementing most of their goals. And let me add that the 17 development goals were developed by one of our own. Her major contribution, the current Deputy Secretary General of UN, who used to be a Minister of Environment in Nigeria, Mr. Mina Mohammed.
Yeah.
Poverty is not a problem in the Western world. Unemployment is not a problem in the Western world. Gender inequality, those are all problems in developing world of continent of Africa and Latin America. So most of those goals were put there for those countries to be able to implement them and become very competent. And let me add one more point. Goal number 17 was never there in the MDGs. It was Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, when in the course of traveling and seeing so much black people all over the world, he now went back to that goal and added goal number 17 called Global Partnership, so that diaspora can repatriate their investment, their intellectual property, whatever they have, under a protected status as a global partner implementing UN SDG, back to the continent of Africa. But it's only the continent of Africa that has not done much. Do you know that Total Energy has one of the biggest investment in renewable, but it is not doing it in Nigeria? A lot of investment money now for sustainable investment are all contributed by the big oil and gas companies. But our NMPC is not there, but it wants to be a global competitor. So there's a lot that has to be done to even put a right foot forward.
Tony, me, I'm just speechless.
Well, I'm glad he said there's an ongoing plan and strategy. Because that really and truly, that is our way out in Nigeria. Because besides doing some technical mitigation measures that to protect ourselves as a nation, like, the deforestation is so heavy. Reforestation, for every one tree that you cut, you must plant 5. That is the norm. Those are the things that, at least in the government end, they should be doing, because it is very germane, so that we don't end up being liable. All those things are going to add to our exposure and liabilities. But I think what he has just alluded to me, I hope, with the UN organ, that thing can work. And, there are industries, in Nigeria, private sector, that can also be brought in, to partner, and the oil companies are here. Some of them are leaving, but there are other industries that can be brought in to partner, to drive this movement. And I think that would be a very good thing for us to do. Because as I'm listening to him and I'm talking to you right now, the political will is not there.
Well, see how time flies. But I will still give the public an opportunity to make one call. We can only take probably just one call. And the number is 0700 2255 1037. 0700 2255 1037. If you're calling from abroad, then you put the +234. Okay? This is Eagle 7 Sports Radio, 90 minutes with mathematical, and we are drawing very, very close to the end of the show. But I see Atai wants to add. You're anxious to say something. Go ahead. Go ahead, Atai.
I want you to add that, like Tony just said, the best opportunity that lies in front of us today in Nigeria is the implementation of the climate change. It's an economy. They call it climate change economy. And you know how many industries makes an economy? Like a Nigerian economy, you know how many industries are inside that economy? So we need to ask the question, what are those industries in this economy? Where do we have comparable advantage to start holding down? That will reduce, because for everything you do, it must have a lower or reduced carbon footprint. That reduced carbon footprint could actually become what they call carbon credit.
Right.
Today, the money is the green money, is the digital, is the carbon credit money. And there are exchanges that buy, sells carbon credit. Nobody's discussing about. We don't have clue. In another 10 years, we'll wake up and find out that we have another IMF on account that we did not anticipate that we are making. Look at a company like Chevron EGTL project has been slowing down the carbon footprint in Nigeria for the past how many years? Please, can we get an estimate of how much carbon footprint it has saved from putting into the ozone layer and how much that is? Because I bet you the white folks in that company have been selling those carbon credits. Nigeria don't have a clue, probably in collaboration with 1 or 2 people who just get whatever they send to him. So these are investments we made that were already in line with sustainability. But who is calculating the carbon footprint reduction? Who is calculating the carbon credit generated by those facilities? Those are billions. Elon Musk alone has collected over $20 billion from climate change funds for the Tesla cars he made that is, that does not contribute to emission. So this is the only thing that could save that country if we have a plan for the next 6 years and that same plan for the next 25 years and follow it through. Baba, Nigeria will be one of the most investable locations on earth because we have everything. A country with young people means that you have people that will pay any loan you collect. They'll give you more loan if you need loan because we have a young population that will pay. So we don't have any choice. We better go look for political will to be able to do the right thing.
Which sectors of our economy? Because I know that the security sector is involved, the sports sector is involved, the trade and industry sector, the health sector. Because I got a call from Dr. Akinroye yesterday, and he was telling me that the World Heart Foundation would have wanted to be part of this conversation if only they knew about it ahead of time. Because climate change has to do with cardiovascular issues and so on and so forth. So all the sectors appear to be involved in this project. Tony.
Yes, and then we also have some major manufacturers, Nestle in Nigeria. What's this other one? There are so many of them.
Cadbury.
Yeah, Cadbury. That can, as I'm listening to Atai, that can be, because when you drive it through the private sector, at the end of the day, you get some kind of understanding. It's easier to now get government's political will to pick up, and so that sector, the manufacturing sector, there are so many big ones. They're there. Lever Brothers, your Unilever, they're there, and I think we can also approach it from that perspective. Carbon credit has been mismanaged in Nigeria. Okay, it has not been given the right of place the way it's supposed to. It could have brought in so much, even money, into our economy through those exchange, because if it has been managed appropriately. Of course, federal government has an office that handles that, but the point of the matter is that the advocacy is near zero. So I think that we're on something. If what I'm taking out of this is what Atai has said, in terms of the plan that is underway through the UN body, okay, to use our youth, to use our music, if we can be able to put that together, articulate it properly and involve the private sector in Nigeria, definitely, without a shadow of doubt, government political will go up. You almost have to force their hands to make it happen.
Our final thoughts as we round off today's show. I give the floor to Atai Albert. Your final thoughts. You have 2 minutes to just round off your final thoughts. Atai.
Yes, my final thought is that we are stuck in this situation. It's a global situation, but Nigeria has all the comparable advantages to take a lead in implementation of these goals. With the amount of energy deposit, we are energy deficient. 80% of Nigeria don't have energy. That impacts our manufacturing and production. You were able to mitigate, create low carbon fuels. That will equally become a cheaper source of energy. Now, energy is no longer what you need to put on pipeline or on wired or national grid. Energy must be delivered in different forms where it is needed. And there is a lot of renewable solutions that have been created in line with the same climate change we're talking about. So Nigeria must look for its good people that understand the global perspective of this implementation. Nigeria must embrace it wholeheartedly so it can create opportunities for the numbers we have, which is our strength. Leverage on what is our biggest branding opportunity, which is music, movies, comedy, and all that, to create a whole new Nigeria driven by sustainability. We cannot turn the back of time. The time will still run. The world will still move forward, doing what they're doing, and will still end up being buyers when we service providers. So my take is that we don't have a choice. We have to jump on board early enough and start creating programs and projects and products that will make Nigeria GDP double in less than 4 years.
Tony, well, the floor is yours.
Yeah, we are custodians of the environment for our future generation. Our forefathers bequeathed on us pristine, sustainable environment. We want development, but we want sustainable development. So it is very important that coming locally to Nigeria, that as a country, we ensure that what we are going to leave for the future generation, okay, should be sustainable. If we don't do that, for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, we are actually hurting ourselves. So it's important for us to align with the UN standards, to have the political will as a country, to step up our game, to ensure that at least we create a balance. You can't close the ozone layer anymore, but you can get the climate change maintained appropriately. And if we do that, then we will have done what is expected of us, because the environment that was bequeathed to us is not what we are about to bequeath to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and we must change that course.
Wow, what a day, what a morning. This is Eagle 7 Sports Radio. I don't know how to thank these two gentlemen this morning, but you have recruited me. I have become an advocate. If you would accept me, you guys are champions of climate change in Nigeria, between Tony Ojeshina and Atai Albert. And I humbly submit my application to become part of you, because what I've just heard this morning lifted my spirit. Initially dampened my spirit, but at the end lifted my spirit. I'm with you in dreaming of a Nigeria that is going to be the greatest country in the world within a very, very short time. And we have the opportunity here now. Climate change is providing us, even within when you hear climate change, it is depressing, it is disappointing, but there's a blessing, there's a hidden treasure there for Nigeria, if only we would look beneath the surface. That's my takeaway from today's program. I want to thank Engineer Tony Ojeshina for this masterclass, and also Atai Albert. That's all we are going to have this morning. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do, then please join us again next week, Saturday, when we bring you another package. But don't forget, climate change is important. It is probably the most important subject in our lives at the moment. Let us all be advocates for change. Thank you and good morning. Bye-bye.